All right, so this is the test of all tests right here. If you do chainsaw sharpening, this is when this is the kind of stuff that kind of puts you in your place. I got a battery thing coming up. Let me grab my charger here. All right, let's get this thing plugged in. We don't need the battery dying on us, right? All right, so we're going to compare my chain to the fastest stuff on the market, C83. I've done these tests before, and it's been, a humbling experience. You know what I mean? You don't realize how fast C83 is until you start putting your best stuff up against it. That's kind of how it works out. And it surprises you, or it'll shock you, or it'll put you in your place, or however you want to put it. So how long has it been now? How long have we been doing this? Working on chains, sharpening, making them faster, and developing it. More than a year. I've been doing it for years, many years. But as far as taking it to this next step, at least 2, right? At least 2 years of developing here. So I don't know if you're one of those guys that kind of watch some of those videos and you're like, boy, why don't he just put out more stuff on this? And I'll tell you guys, that's kind of stuff that you think you got the greatest thing in the world. It's the best you can do, and then you test it and it's like, man, I wish it was faster. And you just think about it and you just can't figure out how to make it faster. And then one day something clicks, so you do something else, and the next thing you know, it's one of those things. It's a learning curve, I'll tell you. But we're gonna do the test today. My round chain and my square chain, both. We're gonna put them both up against C83 and kind of do a first, second, and third place. And our goal here is to put C83 in third place. Right? That's our goal. So, now technically I've already made these cuts, so I'm not gonna kind of hide that fact. I've already made the cuts. It's 3 different chains, chain swaps, and all that stuff. I made the cuts across all 3 chains and everything, so I'm pretty confident that we got good enough cuts that we can compare. I did run into one issue, the dogs on the saw. So when the chain grabs, it pulls the saw into the wood, and I'm fighting it to get it through the wood. I'm bouncing off the dogs as it gets through the wood. I'm gonna have to get rid of the dogs and create like a normal setup for like races and stuff. There's no spikes. It's just smooth. So that's one of the things. That was the first thing I noticed, is that I started bouncing the saw off the dogs going through the wood, and that might interfere with some of this. But I think it's good enough that we should have a clear victor here. This saw that we are running is a ported saw. This is the one I took 9th in at Sawfest. Is a pull-in 445 with a 415 top end, ported up. We did a dyno run on it, came up at exactly 8 horsepower. So, all the parameters of the saw itself are known. You know what I mean? It's been documented and everything. We know this saw performs, and I think that's the only tweak left to do this saw is to fix those spikes, those felling dogs. That, and I think it could take a higher roof, but I'll be honest, I don't think I ever will. Especially after today's test, and you're gonna see why. Torque is starting to become more and more and more of a factor the faster I get with the chain. Even like it's incredible how much torque it takes. That's one of the things I'm learning with my sharpening, is that as I make things hungrier and faster and stuff, boy, does it take a lot more torque to pull it. It's not like you just magically get it to eat more wood. There's a side effect to it, and the side effect is it's going to pull harder, and part of that is it's going to take the torque of the saw. So you got to have the torque to pull it. This saw is running an 8-pin, which should pick up really easy on film or on video film. Yeah, I how long it's been since we've done stuff on film. But yeah, on video, should pick up pretty easy. The C83, so the 8-pin seems to be like the sweet spot for C83 chain, and that's the way I took it to Solfest last year. The 8-pin with C83 seems to be like its sweet spot, where the other two sharpenings I think would perform better on a 7-pin, especially the square. So you're going to kind of see how it kind of takes more torque to pull each different type of sharpening. So let's start off with our baseline. Let's just use the C83 as our baseline cuts, and then we'll go to the round after that, and then we'll go to the square after that. So the first cuts you're going to see here are going to be C83, which this is backwards in order of what I cut them in. So technically I cut it with the C83 last, but we're going to make it on the video first. So here you go, C83 test cuts, baseline cuts, however you want to call it. Alrighty? Alright, so this next one up would be my round grind. I showed an image of this grind on another video, so I still have those images, I think. We'll throw them up here for you. Pretty simple, pretty self-explanatory. I did a video kind of telling you what kind of angles I was running. We'll get into those details more in the future. So I mean, the information's already been out there, what kind of angles I'm running here. They are a bit more extreme, and I do not recommend this for firewood work. It's for a 20-inch bar in this kind of a situation, it's fine, but I don't recommend it for firewood work. It's I mean, I've done videos on it before. I mean, I did a video a long time ago. It was like, here's one of my fast chains that will clearly outdo C83, and I don't recommend it for firewood. That's where we're at right here today. So, and then this last video I did, I kind of mentioned before. So yeah, not a firewood chain. It's just a little bit on the rough side. I don't recommend it. It's not much faster than another chain that I do, or another grind I do. It's really not a whole lot faster, but it gets a little rougher is all. You know what I mean? In a 20-inch piece of wood, it might come out a half a second faster over one of my normal grinds. So it's not a whole lot faster, but it is, and it's something that I've been developing and working on. But here's these cuts. Now up next is the square. I don't think I have images of this particular chain, but I do have images of some square sharpening I've done. So we'll throw that up real quick. The grind on this particular chain looks almost identical to that. It's just the angles are just slightly bit different. And I've just been developing on coming up with a really fast square chain is what I've been doing. And this is the one you're really going to notice how much torque it's going to take to pull the saw, because this chain is capable of eating so much more wood. So the thing is, it does pull a lot of RPM out of the saw. So the question is, by pulling all that RPM out of the saw, will it's kind of equal out, where one that's able to maintain a higher RPM cut as fast as the square that's running at a lower RPM? You know what I mean? Because it does take a lot more torque to pull it. And that's been one of those things that we've been kind of looking at here. So let's go ahead and take a look at these square cuts. so it's time for me to do the editing. I gotta edit all this together and figure out which chain came in first, second, and third place. I think the square came out on top. Between the other two chains though, I don't know. So we're gonna have to find out, and that's what we're about to do. We're gonna find out if all this work has been paying off. And I mean, why invest the money of a square grinder if it's not gonna do what I need it to do? You know, if my round grind is just as fast as the square, then I'll stick with the round. You know, I can unload the square grinder, but you know, if the square ends up coming out that much on top or whatever, that much faster, in the end, after all of our developments and working and everything, we'll keep that square around, you know? So let's find out. This is the moment of truth. So basically I just did a little screen recording. Now I'm going to do a little voiceover. So we are looking at my C83 versus my round grind. And I don't know what I'm doing right now. It's my screen record. Oh, I see what I'm doing. I am kind of looking to see, because it looked like both of them were about the same place halfway through the wood. And it was right at the tail end that it looked like I outpulled it on that piece of wood. So I think it once I started getting about halfway through the wood, I started pushing harder through on the saw, and it was able to eat, you know, a little faster and overtake the C83. Here it is, C83 versus my square. Now, the square was pretty obvious to me as soon as I hit the piece of wood that it was going to be the winner. And this is just me kind of letting it self-feed. I didn't even help it through the wood. This was just like a self-feeding cut. If I would push it through the wood, it would go even faster. It's just, I think the 8-pin sprocket is just a little too big, because the square does pull a lot harder on the saw. It's just devouring so much wood, so it takes more torque, you know what I mean? So, you know, this would be my round versus the square, and you can kind of see how my square is just, I think this is a different cut on the square too. So this cut on the square was actually probably even faster. So it's just like, it's like the more cuts I make with it, the faster I get kind of a feel for it, you know what I mean? And it just does even better and better. So yeah, this is pretty good. The results are good, but you know, we got to do more testing though. I got to make some tweaks to that round. I'll explain here. All right, so it's the next day. I went to do the editing, and I got sidetracked with the kids and stuff. So yeah, I got the editing that you've seen done last night so that I could do this. So basically, the final results here are not probably what they kind of seem on video. The C83 versus my round. So what I was running into with my round chain is that some of the cuts were fast and some of the cuts were not so fast. So what you saw there was one of the ones that was kind of in the middle. And, well, you're actually seeing two cuts there, actually. So you'll have to go back and look again. So the C83 versus round was one of my, probably in the middle, the round, on the round chain, one of the middle fastest cuts, maybe one of the faster ones. Whereas whenever you've seen the comparison of it against the square, it was one of the slower ones. I just kind of did that for myself, but I wanted to inform you of this. But I think what I'm gonna have to do is go in and tweak on my round chain a little. So what I was discovering is that when I was in the cut and the saw was bouncing off the dogs through the wood, and this was skewing my results. Now, my round grind was the first one that I tested. So by the time I got to my square chain and the C83, I had already started compensating for that issue. So those results turned out better than what I did on the round chain. So my round chain testing, those cuts there just weren't completely accurate, but I did figure out that I do want to make a small tweak. So I sharpened my round one up with a CBN wheel, and I'm going to change to one of my regular composite wheels, and I'm going to actually change the profile of the wheel. At one point in time, I had accidentally ground up a chain that cut so freaking fast it was insane. And what I did to kind of save it is I took this little gauge here where you profile it. That's where you profile your wheel. Well, I kind of ground one on the other side, and that was it was a mistake I made on the profiling of the wheel, but you can see it's kind of funky. But for some reason, that ended up being extremely fast. So I think I'm going to go back to that profile, because now that I have this, I can kind of copy it, right? I saved it. And see, I just want to see, but the round chain is close. I just got to fix that issue with it bouncing off the dogs. I got to get rid of the spikes and, make something else. Now, as far as the square chain is concerned, that thing cut like butter. It made that wood feel, it made it feel like butter going through the wood. Very smooth, and it was very little to almost no input from myself. I was just holding the saw and letting it glide through the cut, and it did that all on its own. Can you imagine if I had the power available to start pushing, really starting to push it through the wood, it would just get faster and faster. So I think for certain, we're pretty close here on my square chain. It's easily the fastest one out of all of them. And I think with a few tweaks, we're going to start seeing my square chain really go. I gotta start, I gotta stop running 8-pin for that square chain. I can tell you that. It does kind of lug out the power, if you know what I mean. It lugs on the saw more and pulls down on the power. We're actually going to be running a test here. I'm going to be running on that home light again. And it is ground up like that. That chain is ground like what you just seen. So I'm kind of curious to see how it does, because it's a longer bar and it's probably going to pull on that saw harder now than what you've seen in the past. And I noticed it really takes a lot of torque to pull that chain the way I have it sharpened. This is not a normal square ground sharpening that you typically see. This is me going for speed. You know what I mean? Once I get this sorted out, I'll kind of save it like this, then I'll put a different wheel on and start sharpening for a firewood grind. You know what I mean? I'll figure out a nice firewood grind with one of my other wheels, and we'll start, setting up some chain for a firewood grind. But right now, I'm just working on trying to find a really nice fast grind that I really like, and I think we just nailed it. It was like butter, and the only thing that was holding it back was the amount of power I had available to push it through the wood. So I think we're going to start seeing some really good stuff out of this square chain here. But anyway, those are kind of the results. The C83, it feels like a firewood chain is what it feels like. It feels like a nice, fast firewood chain, and my other ones are starting to, my square chain has definitely exceeded the C83, and my round is probably just a touch faster. Just a touch. It depends on how much power you have available to pull the chain. So if you're on a weaker saw, it may not have enough power. The C83 will probably outdo it. So it kind of depends on that. Like imagine cutting a bigger piece of wood. Say I did this test on 24, 28 inches of wood, longer bar. C83 might come out on top because my chain might pull, too hard on the saw and, lug it down. But this is me trying to figure out a faster setup to take to the races. And when we're racing, the biggest piece of wood is usually around 14 inches. And you're doing that with like a 90cc saw. So, you know, it just gets smaller than that. So having a more hungry grind does not hurt to take to the races, you know, especially if we can get some speed out of it. So that's kind of where we're at. We'll be doing more testing like this. These are just the results from today. And, you know, nothing's ever finalized until it's finalized, right? So, hey, we'll catch you later.